If you've been setting the same goals time and time again, starting off with a lot of enthusiasm and motivation to get things done, only to eventually fall off with them or throw in the towel when things start to get hard, then you have experienced the dip. The dip is where so many of our goals go to die, so in this video we're going to look at what the dip is, why it sucks, but also why it's actually a good thing, and what we can do about it to safeguard ourselves from letting the dip derail our goals. The dip is also known as the Valley of Despair, or essentially the suckiest part of informed pessimism. We can use a diagram to illustrate this a little bit easier, but essentially when we get started with any new goal or project, we're in a space of uninformed optimism. We're excited about the possibility of achieving this goal, but we don't necessarily know exactly what it's going to look like working on it and eventually achieving it. This is where the uninformed part comes in. We're optimistic because we're excited about getting into work and doing the thing, but we don't necessarily know exactly what it's going to take or how it's going to feel throughout the process. Once we get underway though, eventually we get to the stage of informed pessimism. At this stage, we know a little bit more about what the goal is going to require of us, what we're going to need to do in order to work on and achieve it, and we're starting to realize that maybe there's more than we initially anticipated, or maybe it's going to take longer than we initially anticipated. It really becomes apparent the amount of work we're going to have to put in. At the start of informed pessimism though, most of us can work through it, at least for a bit. We already kind of know that any goal that's really worth working on is going to take some work, it's going to take some effort from us, and there will probably be parts that aren't necessarily thrilling or fun or particularly enjoyable to do. We can work through the initial sucky stage of that, but eventually this becomes sustained, and that's where we can start to fall off. This is especially prevalent in any kind of routine-based goal, or goals that have the same kind of application over longer periods of time, like we have to do the same kind of task or set of tasks repeatedly for a longer period. At this stage of your life, you've probably experienced a lot of dips, and come through them, might I add. For instance, learning the alphabet. There was a period where you were very much in the informed pessimism stage, where identifying the letters was really tricky, you got them wrong more times than you got them right, and you had to do constant and repeated practice to be able to learn the letter forms, whether that be recognizing them, reading them, or writing them for yourself. That example might have been from quite a while ago, but there are other examples you're probably familiar with too. The dip can be found in learning a new skill, for instance, developing a new hobby or talent, learning to ride a bike and falling off plenty before you actually get the hang of it, learning to play an instrument and having all of your chords sound absolutely wrong while you're trying to play the guitar, and annoying everybody in your household during the process. The dip can be found in college and university as you grind through all of your course materials, trying to cram them into your mind hole so that then you can get your diploma or certificate at the end. We see the dip in people who are trying to write books, doing your drafting, editing, redrafting, re-editing, so that you can eventually get to a published work. We see the dip in people who are going after health and fitness goals, paying attention to nutritional information and portion sizes, doing daily exercise, all of those kind of things. The dip is that part in the middle, the part between where we are and where we want to be, that kind of sucks, but is necessary to get to the end goal. While the dip does suck because it separates current us from the things that we want, the life we want to live, the goals we want to achieve, the habits and routines we want to have developed, what sucks even more is that the dip often is the main reason we don't achieve our goals. We get into that sucky middle part where everything is just a grind. We feel like we're not making progress, everything is going too slowly, so we figure we'll just retreat back to the uninformed optimism stage, just dreaming about the possibilities rather than doing the work. The problem here though is that when we get stuck in that cycle of excitedly starting a goal, getting underway, noticing that things kinda suck, and dropping off when they get just a little too sucky, if we repeat that time and time again, we are wasting so much time, effort, and energy. And sometimes other resources like money, depending on the kind of thing you're working on. When we quit and restart on a goal, we don't get anywhere. We might restart a goal saying, this time it's gonna be different. This time I'm actually gonna make it happen. But the dip is still going to be there. And if we haven't at the very least acknowledged the fact that the dip exists, then there's a good likelihood that we're just going to fall off again. While we are going to talk about what we can do about the dip, first it's good to look at why the dip is actually a good thing. Like, yes, it does suck, and it is the grindy part of any goal, and the part that gets us to fall off with it, and the part that makes it feel like a giant slog. But the dip is also the thing that makes goals rewarding, because we have to put that time, effort, energy into working on the goal. When we actually reach it, we feel a much bigger sense of accomplishment. Pretty much anything worth doing has a dip, whether that's learning something, trying something new, building relationships. All of these things have a messy, kind of sucky middle section that we have to go through to get to the other side. And because of the dip, because of that sucky middle part, a lot of people won't do the thing, which makes it even more rewarding when we do. The good feelings of the reward aside though, what can we actually do about the dip that'll make it more likely that we achieve our goals? Now, we can't get rid of the dip. The dip is going to be there, and we want it to be there because it makes the things that we want to do worth doing. But one of the most important things we can do is just acknowledge the fact that the dip exists and we're going to experience it. By acknowledging the fact that the dip is going to happen for any new undertaking or goal that we want to work on, we can figure out if we actually want to undertake the goal at all. Essentially, we're just pre-deciding for ourselves, is it worth going through the sucky phase to get the end outcome? This is going to be very much dependent on you and dependent on the goal you're thinking about working on. For example, a goal that I recently decided wasn't worth the sucky middle part was learning Japanese. Like, I would love to be fluent in Japanese. I had a book on my shelf for years that was supposed to help me learn basic Japanese, and then I could build up from there and become fluent. And while it's definitely something I would love to be able to do, I'm not willing to put the effort in that is necessary to get through the dip, because that dip is a big one. Learning a language is hard. I should know, I had to learn English. It is my first language. I didn't have to learn it as a second language or anything. But by acknowledging the fact that a dip exists with the goal of learning a new language, I can weigh up the kind of cost-benefit ratio. And I've decided that for me, the benefit of being fluent in Japanese doesn't outweigh the time, effort, and energy I would have to put in order to become fluent. For you though, that might be different. It is a personal choice. Another thing that we can do is pre-decide the things that might have to be true in order for us to quit. Oftentimes when we're in the middle of the dip and we're in the suck of it all, our feelings are typically quite negative, and people don't usually make the best choices when they've got negative feelings. Oftentimes when I'm feeling poorly, I continue to make poor choices that don't necessarily take me in the direction I want to go. So if I'm in the middle of the dip, I will essentially rationalize why quitting is the best idea. It's essentially my brain trying to protect me against the short-term suck of it all, rather than highlighting the long-term benefits of continuing to work on my goals. Knowing when to quit something though is a valuable skill, so pre-deciding what kind of conditions need to be true in order for us to let go of a goal can help us avoid make those in the moment, maybe not necessarily the best choices. We don't want to throw in the towel when we're in a panic because we're in the suckiest part of a goal. A question that's really helped me in the dip so far is my persistence going to pay off in the long run? This in particular can help us refocus on that kind of light at the end of the tunnel, or the end outcome for the goal that we're hoping for, and just considering whether the things we're doing in this suckiest part of the goal are actually taking us in the direction we want to go. What can also be really helpful though is considering whether the things we're doing in this middle section that isn't the most fun or the most thrilling or is kind of boring or just sucks, is this the only way to go about where I want to go? Now, I'm not thinking about completely restarting a goal and completely changing tracks with it, or loosening my interpretation of what success looks like, because that doesn't really benefit me either. But if we take a fitness goal as an example, there are a lot of ways to work on our fitness. It doesn't just have to be gym workouts. It doesn't just have to be Zumba classes. It doesn't just have to be weight training. For me, right now, it's walking on my walking pad in the morning, watching The Walking Dead, because I like the fact that I'm walking to The Walking Dead. I'm not changing the end goal of being more physically fit. I'm just making sure that the way I'm going to get there is something that doesn't suck as much as other possible options. Again, it's all a personal preference type thing, but find ways to work on your goals that just suck less. One of the things that makes the dip particularly sucky is just feeling like we're putting in a lot of time, effort, energy, and not really getting anywhere. And that's why, to combat this, it is so important to keep track of our progress. The key here is that it needs to be more than just an acknowledgement of the fact that we are making progress. It's all good and well to tell yourself you're making progress, but what kind of evidence do you have to show for it? Now, I'm not coming in here to try and like check your receipts or anything like that, but what are you doing to highlight to yourself that you're headed in the right direction? That could be the number of days in a row that you've done a habit. It could be the growth of something or the size of something, like a word count, the number of followers or readers you have, the number on a scale if it's a weight-based goal. They don't just have to be numeric things, but what evidence do you have that the work you're putting in is paying off? Even if it's little, even if it's small, as long as it's something that is a genuine improvement and something that you're working on, make sure you highlight that evidence to yourself. It just helps to reinforce that your efforts are worth it, and going through this dip is going to be worth it too. Another thing that we can do here is amplifying the long-term benefits of working on our goal. Because quitting during the dip is usually a response to short-term pain or the suck of the moment, making sure that we have something to focus on, that long-term future that we're hoping for ourselves, can help us remember why we started and why we want to keep going. A couple of ways that you can do this is something like journaling a day in the life from the perspective of future you who has accomplished the goal. How does that future version of yourself feel? Are they proud? Do they feel accomplished? How does their life look? How is it different? Essentially letting ourselves experience that success before we actually get there. Another way though could be something like vision boarding. It gives you a really nice visual reminder of what success looks like, what you're striving towards, and you can come back to that visual anytime you need kind of a boost of motivation or a bit of a pick-me-up to get yourself through the dip. One of the things we really want to make sure of though is that we're not just passive passengers in the dip. We're not just quiet quitting on our goal and essentially accepting that the suck is just going to be there and there's nothing we can do about it. You have more power than that, and you need to give yourself credit for it. Most successful people don't just ride through the dip, they really lean into it and make things better for themselves. Like, yes, there will always be some suck that comes with a goal, but you don't have to let it drag you down and make you quit. Your time, effort, and energy is worth more than just being a serial starter of the same goals over and over. The stuff we've talked about so far in today's video mainly comes from the book The Dip by Seth Godin. That one's linked in the description box if you wanted to check it out. While it is more of a business book, I very much read it through the lens of goal getting and goal setting, and it is also a nice little one, so it only takes maybe a morning or an afternoon to read. One of the things that isn't so much talked about in the book though, but is something that I find really helpful for tackling a dip, is what I call challenge planning. This is essentially thinking about in advance the kind of challenges or struggles that are going to make the dip particularly sucky, and figuring out what you can do in response to those so that then you don't let them derail you, derail the progress you're making, and make you quit your goals. Rather than being blindsided by those challenges, you can plan with intention as to how you're going to respond to them. If you want to see my process for challenge planning and why it's so helpful for achieving your goals, then this video is the next one to check out. That one goes through my full process of challenge planning and includes the questions that I ask to make sure I do a thorough job. So click or tap on that one and I'll see you over there.